And we'll start with a song from Karima Hanifa of Iman, Atlanta, my beautiful choir sister. You can just hear her voice.
So I may serve thee, Lord, fix my heart so that I may be used by thee. For I'm not worthy of all these blessings. Give me a clean heart. Give me a clean heart. Give me a clean heart, and I'll follow thee.
Thank you, Karima Hanifa, for that beautiful song. And thank you to everyone who's joined us here in this space. My name is Paige Dukes. I'm here at the Southern Center for Human Rights in Atlanta, and I'm here as part of Mourning Our Losses. We are a group of educators, artists, organizers, and others who have worked in and outside of prisons, who are committed to the release of incarcerated people across the United States, and now advocating for accountability and transparency from departments of correction and parole boards and legislators during the coronavirus. In May, when we started this group, 5 of the 6 major hotspots in the United States were in jails and prisons. And now Mourning Our Losses has grown to over 60 volunteers across the country, here to create space to lift up people who have died of coronavirus in prisons, jails, and detention centers, and for the disenfranchised grief of their loved ones, both sides of the walls. As I said earlier, I want to thank the organizers of the National Week of Mourning for designating this day to remember all the lives we've lost. At this point, we know of 1,300 people who've died of COVID in prisons across the country, many of whom appear only as names on a spreadsheet. Mourning Our Losses has been researching and tracking and trying to name those people and memorialize them on our website. The memorials that we hear today come from all over the country: Texas, California, New Jersey, Georgia, New York, and Illinois. In these states, tens of thousands of residents and employees in prisons, jails, and detention centers have contracted COVID-19. Hundreds have died. In Texas alone, the toll stands at 250 known deaths. These first 4 memorials come to us from Texas, California, and New York.
A Memorial for Ann Smith by Jennifer Toone, Ann's friend and favorite librarian. I don't want none of them dirty books, Toone. I looked up from the library computer. Granny Ann was standing on the other side of the counter with her glasses perched at the end of her nose, glaring at me. I leaned over and gently took the book out of her hand. Then double fantasy is not a good idea. She took it back and pointed to the cover. Hot summer romance. It says romance. I took the book away from her again. That doesn't mean temperatures in the summertime. It means sex, Granny. She threw her hands up. Then keep it. You girls like all that goosing in your books. I just want a love story. I laughed and told her, yes, many of the ladies prefer something a little bit steamier, but I wanted to make sure she left with something she liked. Did you see the Debbie McComber on the new release shelf? I believe it's still over there. The women crowded around the book cart parted as Anne inched towards it. She stared at the books with some confusion. What you need, Granny Ann? Asked a younger woman named Red. Anne attempted leaning forward, but hesitated. Honey, she said to the girl, will you look for the Debbie McComber and hand it to me? The normally impatient crowd waited for the book to be found, and Anne was out of harm's way before jostling each other for space again. She checked out the much tamer romance novel and wandered out the door. Later, she sent me a message. Find me another one just like that. And I did, many times over. This is what I remember the most about her, that insatiable desire to read and escape. She told me she liked to snuggle in bed, sip coffee, and read. The younger girls cooked for her sometimes, and she enjoyed their energy and conversation, but often she just wanted to read. She was a quiet lady who I knew had a life sentence, so I never really asked her what for. I found her to be intelligent and warm. She minded her business and led a quiet existence among us. When a friend wrote recently and said that she'd heard that Anne was on a ventilator, I knew that she wouldn't make it. I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt it. I held out hope that perhaps the prison grapevine was wrong, but on August 24th, the gossip proved true. TDCJ posted Anne's death. COVID-19 had taken Granny Ann in the worst way possible, alone and in a prison, hospital, infirmary. I don't know Anne's criminal history. I can't speak to anything about her other than our years at Mountain View. And it is because of that I want to say, I don't know what justice was served by her suffering and death. She was a sweet person, but to the state and maybe society, she was just another offender, another statistic, another criminal. So I write this testament that she was much more than that. She was wise. She was a gentle lady who made us laugh and taught us respect. I take some comfort in knowing she still exists as a part of me and every woman in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. We are all intrinsically linked. Anne lives on, and we will make damn sure of it. Ann Smith, 77-year-old woman living in Texas, passed away on July 29, 2020, 2 weeks after she tested positive for COVID-19. She was incarcerated at the Carroll Young Unit in Dickerson, Texas, and she is missed dearly by myself and many, many others. We mourn her loss.
On Saturday, July 25th, 2020, Eric William Warmer became another tragic victim to that COVID outbreak in Texas prison law. Family, friends, and those who knew Eric are saddened by his passing. Eric, as friends call him E, was born and raised in San Francisco. He grew up in the Escort district of San Francisco and attended Balboa High School. Eric loved riding dirt bike and motocross. He was also a Golden Glove boxer. Eric loved dogs his whole life. His trade was dry cleaning, where he worked for many years. A friend who knew E from behind the walls of San Quentin said that he was a very kind, caring, and generous person. He was a spiritual person who often read his devotions every morning, which could be seen displayed in his practice day-to-day life. He would go out his way to help others and would not turn anyone down who needs help. He was part of the Native Hawaiian spiritual group dance and the AAPI ethnic study group San Quentin group. Spending years behind walls, he understood the hardship that caused on his family and relationships. Despite the harsh condition of incarceration, he would continue to write letters of hope and encouragement to his stepdaughter, providing her with insight and him on life. To his brother Hank, who he was very close with, he would dream of one day traveling the world with him to see the great nature, wonders, and connect people. Ed will always be remembered by friends and family as a kind and warm-hearted person. He was loved by so many, and especially those who knew the best. Eric William Warner is survived by his stepdaughter Shanti, brother niece Chloe, nephew William, and aunt Norma, Juliet, and Concha. The San Quentin outbreak. COVID-19 has spread widely behind the walls of San Quentin. San Quentin, like many prisons in California, is ill-equipped to handle a pandemic, especially due to the prison's unsanitary conditions, lack of medical resources, and overcrowding. Before May 31st, there was no positive COVID-19 cases in San Quentin. On May 31st, 121 people were transferred to San Quentin from CMI, a facility in Chino, California, where a deadly COVID-19 outbreak occurred. On the same day of their transfer, CDCR had confirmed the first positive case of COVID-19 in San Quentin. In the following week, hundreds of cases sprang up. According to the California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, as of July 20th, among those incarcerated at San Quentin, there have been 289 COVID confirmed cases, and 13 people have already died of COVID-19.
Hector Rodriguez held tightly to the certainty that his incarceration was just temporary. Mr. Rodriguez's seemingly trivial punishment for failing to register his address as required by the conditions of his parole did little to foreshadow that his tragic death would be the result of his confinement. Just a few short months into his sentence, Hector Rodriguez was found dead in his Rikers Island jail bed at the age of 60. Although a severe asthma attack was ultimately to blame for Hector's June 21st, 2020 death, it is suspected that his COVID-19 diagnosis in April exacerbated the lung disease which caused his untimely death. Despite having previously served decades behind bars, his incarceration failed to prepare him for the inherent obstacles that preceded his liberation. Lacking post-incarceration resources and living as a homeless man for much of his adult life, he simply could not register an address which he did not have. It is an ironic notation that the same prosecutors that believed he was due punishment for a technical violation were the same people who expected him to behave well enough while detained to earn early release credit. A cynical benefit of the doubt that came only after reviewing him through the lens of a defined and imposing penalty. It is clear that the state's agents viewed Mr. Rodriguez as a systemic throwaway and left him to his own devices to navigate a system designated for his failure rather than a success. In reading about Hector, it became obvious that his continued interaction with the legal system was less about his indisposition to change and more about the system's ineptitude to provide pragmatic forms of reintegration into society. It is evident that when the system takes responsible steps by providing resources to stabilize the path of reintegration, that it will be easier for incarcerated people to then take reciprocal responsible steps towards being contributing members of society, and the latter cannot come before the former. Our friend's passing shines a light not only on New York's antiquated criminal codes, but on all laws that govern these charged with various crimes across the United States. Even in areas where there is extensive consent that the law must act, we remain cognizant with the use of the outdated law that sometimes only works to make matters worse. These considerations lead one to wonder, in the 43 years between Hector's conviction and his death, did anyone attempt to treat his emotional scars that may have only manifested in his behavior? As we understand that the need for retribution is deeply embedded in our society's ideals, society in turn must also acknowledge that in the wake of a deadly pandemic, every penalty has the potential to become a death penalty. Hector Rodriguez's contraction of the lethal coronavirus just a month into his short jail sentence reflects how even those detained for minor technical violations can inadvertently pay the ultimate price. When we emphasize that our friend was safer on the streets of New York living as a homeless man and confined in the inhumane, unsanitary conditions of Rikers Island, it becomes apparent that the state's negligence was more criminal than any technical violation of Hector Rodriguez. Memorial for Madonna by her friends. God has a tendency to place things in the soil that will bear its fruit. Why Madonna was placed on this soil, only God knows. But as a witness to her growth and the lives she touched, I can almost see his purpose. We never know the whys of life, but Madonna grew tremendously here behind these walls. I remember when she first walked in, just hard-headed and full of opinions. I just knew that I would have my hands full, and I did with her. But in doing so, she taught me so much about life and to not always be so uptight. She taught me to laugh a little louder and that it was okay to speak my mind. A lot of people have many memories of the woman we call Madonna, but the thing that sticks with me the most is her attitude. She wasn't afraid of nothing or no one. She lived out loud. So many women have yet to find her roar. Madonna was born with hers. She will forever be missed. She will forever be loved, and she will always be remembered. May she rest in paradise. I can only picture her in heaven, looking around, trying to see what mischief she can get into next. By April. Madonna was such a wonderful woman. Even though I really wasn't close to her, we had a silent bond that made it easy for me to speak to her. She would always make me laugh if I was somewhere she was. I heard her talk about going home in her freedom and what she wanted to do when she paroled. She had a wonderful spirit and a big heart. I saw her to be very outspoken. God bless her and her family. She is now at peace. God bless. By Katrina. Madonna was a funny person, always making people laugh. She was a fighter, a strong person. God wanted to stop her pain and wanted her home early. She is at peace now with no more worries. Like Kaya. Madonna, R.I.P. I love you, girl. Fly with the angels. Like Kyra. Madonna, you were truly a blessing to all of us. You are loved. By Brandy Foreman. Madonna, Pooch and Leslie, we will miss you from now till eternity. You were amazing as a play sister, and we love you. Peace till we meet again. By Joan. I'm at a loss for words. I've never seen you leaving this earth. My heart hurts for you and your son. I will always love you. Very photo. To the family of Madonna Watson, I send my deepest condolences to the family that I constantly heard about and asked about. I cannot imagine what you must be going through. You will continue to be in my thoughts. I will never forget Madonna. I met her when I first came to prison. She was always and forever be a special friend. God bless you and yours. Sincerely, Jasmilla. To Miss Madonna and family. I send my love to you and the family. You are gone but never forgotten. You will always be missed and loved. God has gained another angel to watch us and always remember the funny jokes and stuff talking we used to do in Harrison with Purple. I love you and miss you so much, Madonna. Lord, be with the family. Love always. By Donna. And this is my second poem. It's called Mourning Our Losses.
Our hearts are with the loved ones of Granny Ann, Eric, known as E, Hector, and Madonna. Please bear with us. We know the audio quality is not the best, but we have a written program to go with this, which we are sending out to all attendees, and we will also post a link on our Mourning Our Losses Facebook page. Our next piece was written and recorded by Rufus Rudolph, a poet who wrote to us from a prison on the East Coast. His poem is titled Mourning Our Losses.
I be sitting here at a loss for words, feeling like spaghetti and needing some herbs. Tears feel like they stabbing me. It's like a thief got a hold to my soul and keep grabbing me. How much more can I endure? My heart is like a path and no one can open the door. I be reaching and can't grasp what I want. I know there are cliffs in life, but I'm too strong to jump. My strength comes from my imagination. Everything I dream, I chase it. I know those that not here be glad to change shifts. Hour by hour, they just want to make sense. Well, sense of a life that's worth living. No more show on Thanksgiving. I'd rather be cooped up in the kitchen, eating chicken with my siblings. Lord, I feel pain for the people. Every time I hear their name, I need you. We fight tooth and nail with this evil. Whatever it costs us, I'm going to be there with you until the end. Mourning our losses.
Thank you, Rufus. Those suffering from the effects of this pandemic behind bars include the resident facilities, those who work inside, those who support returning community members and their loved ones on the outside, who fear for and mourn their deaths. These next 4 memorials honor people we have lost belonging to all these groups.
Greetings of peace and blessings, and beginning with the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. About 20 years ago, I had the honor and pleasure of meeting the Honorable Dr. Imam Akbar Shabazz. The capacity from which I became acquainted with the Imam was that of a leadership body, where the Imam met with us often to encourage us towards human excellence. Our Imam is a student of the late Honorable Imam W.D. Muhammad, radiallahu anhu, a modern scholar on Islam and a champion for human excellence. Dr. Imam Akbar, radiallahu anhu, as an Islamic chaplain for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, created an environment to learn the tenets of the religion of Al-Islam for Muslims incarcerated throughout the state of Texas. In this capacity, he established offender-led Islamic programming in collaboration with TDCJ. He spent over 40 years fighting for the rights of incarcerated persons to acknowledge, accept, and pursue their human excellence, regardless of who they were. Dr. Imam Akbar, may Allah be pleased, may God Almighty be pleased with him, influenced and mentored many people in our incarcerated population and his community. Dr. Imam Shabazz will definitely be missed and is loved by many who had the honor of being in his presence. Fighting for Al-Islam to be implemented inside the Texas prison has consequently resulted in many brothers and sisters becoming more productive human beings. We thank our Honorable Dr. Imam Akbar Shabazz for his service to humanity. May God Almighty forgive him his sins and grant him the higher level of paradise.
Scott Douglas Cutting Sr. left this world on May 9th, after more than 3 weeks of being hospitalized with COVID-19. He was 70 years old. He left behind 2 children who he loved dearly, Tiffany Fortney and Scott Cutting Jr. Tragically, Scott Jr. took his own life on July 30th. We mourn the losses of him and his father. Prior to his incarceration, Scott Sr. worked as a tax preparer in Apple Valley, California. He and his wife Linda were high school sweethearts. Scott played on the basketball team, and during one game, the ball flew to the sidelines and hit Linda on the head. My dad said that's what gave him the courage to ask her out, Tiffany said. Scott Sr. is remembered fondly by his high school classmates. I'm glad that I was able to visit with Scott Sr. at our high school 50th reunion, said classmate Chris Caldwell. What a fun guy. After high school, Scott attended the University of Southern California. As an alum, he purchased football season tickets and would take his entire family, or sometimes just Tiffany, to the games. My dad was one of the best dads anybody could ever ask for, Tiffany said. The Cuttings were a close-knit family. Once, they went hiking in the hills and Tiffany started sinking in a pile of mud. Scott Jr. pulled her to safety and carried her the rest of the way home. About 25 years ago, Linda passed away. It was very hard for us, Tiffany said, but we stuck together through all the bumpy times. Scott Sr. kept up a strong connection with his children. Before he was incarcerated, he spoke to them every day, to Tiffany on the phone and to Scott Jr. in person because the 2 of them lived close to one another. The last time the 3 of them were all together was a few years ago when Scott Sr. and Jr. visited Tiffany at her home in Prescott, Arizona. We had a great time just hanging out and talking, she said. In 2017, Tiffany entered a local singing competition, the Prescott Idol. Scott Sr. came out to watch her perform, and Tiffany won first place. Scott was thrilled. He started to cry, and despite Tiffany's modest claims that it was just a local competition, he said it didn't matter and that he was just so proud of her. One of the best things my dad ever said to me was that I was one of his best friends, Tiffany said. At the time of his death, Scott Sr. was serving a 26-month sentence at Terminal Island, a low-security federal prison in San Pedro, California, that quickly became a hotspot for the coronavirus. More than 66% of the incarcerated people living there contracted COVID-19, and Scott was the seventh to die. Terminal Island was particularly vulnerable because many of the people in prison there require long-term medical or mental health care. Scott was one of these people. He had diabetes and heart problems. Furthermore, the facility was vastly overcrowded when the pandemic hit. Built to accommodate only 800 people, the prison housed 1,042. Several California members of Congress have demanded investigations into conditions at Terminal Island, and the ACLU filed a lawsuit calling for a substantial reduction to the prison population there. The lawsuit alleges that despite being 70 years old, having pre-existing conditions, and showing symptoms for days, Scott Sr. was not tested for coronavirus until the symptoms were so severe that he had to be placed on a ventilator. In a statement, the ACLU added that the crisis need never to have reached such horrific proportions, but through a series of unconscionable delays, blunders, and failures to follow official guidelines, the situation grew unimaginably worse. After Scott Sr. passed away, Scott Jr. spoke on CBS Los Angeles about his father's death. "I feel terrible," he said. "That's my dad. I love him." A few months later, he took his own life. Though we will never know how connected Scott Jr.'s suicide was to his father's passing, Tiffany said they were extremely close. "The loss of my dad really hit my brother very hard," she added. We mourn Scott Sr. and Scott Jr., and we condemn the negligence and cruelty of the federal prison system that is at the center of their deaths. We send Tiffany all the strength we can, and we hope she finds comfort in the thought of her family reunited in eternal rest. Her brother and father will be missed.
James McGough was a wonderful man. He was my best friend and soulmate. Despite his hardship of being incarcerated at a young age and doing 25 years of time, he was always able to find the silver lining. He helped me find the positive in any situation. If I had a dilemma in which I felt there was no solution, his sound advice was, quote, "Kim, there is always something you can do," end quote. And he was absolutely correct. His life was taken way too early. We had hopes and dreams of him being released from prison and getting married. We planned on living into our 80s together, but that was not God's plan for us. James was very spiritual and lived his Catholic faith. His motto was to, quote, "leave people better than he found them," end quote. He was quick to feed the hungry and help the guys who rode in without hygiene supplies. He was always wanting to contribute in any way, shape, or form that he could. He realized his dream in securing a Braille job at the facility he was placed at. He wrote Braille children's books and really took his craft seriously, following the transcribing rules to the best of his ability. Also, this job entailed proofreading other co-workers' work. James was a perfectionist, and his co-workers often got upset with him for being too picky, but his focus was doing quality work for the blind children that would read books his company transcribed. James was also a very gifted artist. He enjoyed making greeting cards, portraits, and sports logos for his friends and family. His creative artwork evolved over the years, and his skills were impeccable. James will be missed by many. My life certainly has a big void in it now that he has passed. I am happy for him that he is finally free, but I miss him at the same time. The day he died, I found my guardian angel charm that I had lost a few months back. I know he is watching over me in heaven.
Nnamdi Azikiwe. This is a beloved son, brother, cousin, uncle, nephew, and friend. Nnamdi Azikiwe's sisters, Roseanne Rawls, paused decisively after speaking each word to emphasize the many roles her brother occupied during his life. Nnamdi, 57, passed away on April 24th, 2020, after having been incarcerated in East Jersey State Prison for nearly 40 years. He was set to be released on December 17, 2021. Nnamdi's sisters have spoken publicly about their beloved brother since his death. Sandra Chambers decried the conditions in which her brother spent his last weeks. "We need to be heard," she wrote. She related how Nnamdi called home frequently to report on how he and 14 others at East Jersey State Prison had been transported to a different part of the prison, where they were housed together in one room. The move occurred to vacate space for sick patients, but in clearing space for others who needed care, the prison placed Nnamdi and the other men in harm's way. He was fearing for his life, Sandra said, and the situation was a disaster waiting to happen. Astonishingly, Nnamdi became the 7th of those 15 men to pass away from COVID-19 on April 24th. They were not being treated like human beings, wrote Sandra, who feels an incredible sense of injustice in relation to her brother's death. Various organizations have included Nnamdi in their campaigns advocating against current policies and conditions in New Jersey prisons. All of Us or None, Northern New Jersey chapter, published a list of incarcerated people who have died from the virus and prefaced the list by writing, "They are not just numbers, and we remember them." Additionally, a coalition of social justice-minded New Jersey organizations coordinated the Say Their Names funeral procession and called to action at the Trenton War Memorial on May 28th to honor those who have died in prisons from COVID-19 and to demand action from New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. The organizers of the event wrote, "Please stop this list from getting longer." Sandra and Roseanne both attended the Say Their Names event and posted signs in honor of Nnamdi. Roseanne appealed to the governor to say their names. "That's the least you can do." The loss of Nnamdi is unconscionable. We lend our support to his loving sisters, who are part of the entire community of people who will mourn his life and work to carry on his legacy.
We mourn the loss of Imam Shabazz, Scott Sr. and his son, Scott Jr., Kim's fiance, James, and Roseanne's brother, Nnamdi. Send love and strength to them, both to heal and to fight for justice. The next 4 memorials celebrate the many talents of those we've lost. They were painters, writers, poets, and pillars of their communities. The world is poor without them.
Hi there, I'm Joanna Macy, and I am honored to take part in this memorial. I want to memorialize and honor Orlando Romero. He spent 28 years in San Quentin in the block of the condemned. I got to know him through his paintings. He sent me one in exchange for some favor I'd done for his appeals lawyer. an appeal that was defeated, of course. And that painting, I could hardly believe it. It was so beautifully executed. It showed a tired city street of, it could be dying civilization. And the street itself was crumbling. And it took me a while to realize that what I was looking at was not just a pool of water that had been exposed by the hole in the foundations, but I looked through, that was the earth, and there above that was the black outer space with stars shining. And the city in its decline had given way to expose us to the universe herself. I thought, what mind conceived this? So I had to write, and I thanked him. And from that grew, over the last 2 years, a correspondence that was a joy of my life, and a joy to get to know this remarkable man, a man of great intellect, of intelligence, who in his heart and mind had made peace, was free, with a sense of humor and not a word ever of complaint. Wow, that certainly rubbed off on me, I'm glad to say, at least a little bit. And I mourn his passing. That great spirit. At 48, 12 days before his 49th birthday, from COVID-19.
Tim was a thinker and a writer, and he's dead. He died making virus masks for Texas first responders, despite his having 5 kidney failures. He died at the hospital in Galveston on April 23rd, 2020. Tim wrote to me and myriad others beginning in 2006, describing his prison conditions. He also wrote about his inhalant addiction, his Vietnam experiences, failed marriages, and his lost freedoms from his addiction. While in prison, he earned college degrees and wrote novels and published short stories describing both prison conditions and the lives lost to addiction. Years ago, he wrote, quote, "When my kidneys started failing me, I was thinking about taking the coward's way off this old planet. But I can't stand to think of not leaving a legacy of any type in this world. No kitties, no wife, no nothing. I prayed to God, although I was mad as hell at him, and found a way to leave this legacy and found a way back to him again." That legacy is a superb collection of short stories, some published, and many out there circulating from magazine to contest. With his prize money, he was able to buy a typewriter and continuing supply of ribbons. Quote, "Writing surpasses these bars in prison, and I am able to soar outside these fences and past the gun towers and tell my story that I hope will someday bring about some changes." He had a new manuscript out with a good friend to type, Cowboys and Spaceships. Creative, insightful, provocative, and now perhaps never published. One of Tim's stories was published by the Marshall Project. When his death was announced, they memorialized him, including excerpts from some of his stories. Tim spoke as often as he could to new groups, describing his own addictions and the price he was paying. Studying the legal system, he learned what had happened to him in the courts and what options he might have had to break the addictions instead of being locked in a cage. He graduated from Glenn College despite the bars. He graduated from Lee College. He took correspondence courses, received an honorary degree in theology and divinity. He studied to become a paralegal. His death is a waste of his intelligence, remorse, thoughtful teaching. His death was preventable. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice did not begin testing until May 10th or so. They're testing the very people who were constricted into the shops to make the masks for those outside. They didn't get masks. Tim's sewing schedule increased weekly as the TDC announced rising quotas. Already medically insecure, he obviously got tired. In his last days, friends had to help him up the step each time he went to medical and returned. Tim wrote to me that he was scared. I can't afford to get the stuff like anyone else in the world. No one wants it. But after all this time trying to get my life together, we have this killer waiting to attack. And it's these stupid folks that won't pay heed to the warnings that will end up killing us needlessly. Tim had been turned down in April for parole, despite having served more than 30 years. Quote, why doesn't the parole board stop handing out 5-year set-offs? We've done what was required. He did that and more. He died.
When Angel passed away, really was such a shock for the whole community because she was so well known and so loved by so many, and nobody really seen it coming so fast. It took her like with a matter of a week or two. She was here and then she was not. She was just gone. And for me, it was really personal because I met Angel many years ago, and the first time I saw her. Because I wasn't born and raised in the States. I was born in Southeastern Europe and Bulgaria. So my whole family is back there. My whole immediate family is back in Europe. So when I saw Angel for the first time, she reminded me of my mother. That's my first impression. So when I saw her, I automatically was drawn to her energy, to her beautiful smile, to her kindness. She's just a beautiful person inside and out. So since that day, I told her that I was like, may I introduce myself? And I introduced myself, and I told her, I'm going to start calling you mom. She's like, okay, well, you're my baby. Since that day, we were very close. So she was my prison mom. It was really like taking advice from her. I was just drawn to her like immediately. And afterwards, we lived together, and she just like even showed me even more kindness and more understanding. And to think of her like being incarcerated since she was 19 years old, and to have to hold the oldest number in the institution, and her biggest fears were to die in prison. She didn't want to die here. That was her main thing, and it was so unfortunate that she had to go and pass away in this environment and not to experience the real freedom every person should feel and be surrounded by the loved ones that she really wants, because she had a niece, she had family out there that really loved and cared for her. Of course, we did as well. I did so much. I mean, I love Angel more than anybody in this institution, really, because she not only reminded me of my biological mom, but she was godmother to me in here, just to go to and get that great advice and just feel closeness. Now I know she's in a better place. I know that, and I know we had a great memorial for her in the building that she lived in. She resided in. Like she used to go in the garden and she used to speak to the birds. She always wanted to be reborn as a bird. So I know she's watching us from above. She loved, her favorite bird was hummingbird. Yeah, she used to have like little feeders for them, like with sugar every morning for them too. So cute. She'll be remembered forever. I just want to say, like, we still miss her. I mean, when I think of her, it's just always sadness that overwhelming sadness, but at the same time, just put a smile on my face because she was fearless. She was fearless in so many levels. Hi, my name is Michelle, and I'm honored to share who Angel Marie Kodiak was with you. In prison, we form bonds with each other because it's like a sisterhood that surpasses what you would call a family, because these are connections that we forge out of this shared experience, because we're seeking to survive our incarceration, and we learn to pull together to make it through each day. Angel was a veteran of these experiences, and she came in as a youth, and she went through her own set of ups and downs. She was a knucklehead. She went to pad sex. She had handcuffs put on, but she also began to blossom into someone who we could count on to go to for a listening ear. She gave really good counsel. She had great war stories, and she was the person willing to give an appropriate kick in the butt to the newbies, to the new girls just coming in and struggling with their time and acting out. They didn't know how to deal with their emotions or what it was like to now be in prison. And we all knew that Angel cared about others in an environment where really the best way to survive is to only care about yourself. But Angel was willing to care about others. A month before she died, Angel actually really taught me a lesson about who I am. It was late afternoon. It was a really hot day, and we were standing outside the chow hall building in this long line that was like snaking down, far down the pavement. We had to be 6 feet apart. And we heard our unit PA system call out for a wheelchair pusher and to pick up an elderly member of our unit from her job site. And we could see her sitting in her wheelchair way across the yard, waiting for someone to come pick her up. And the announcement was repeated, wheelchair pusher respond, pick up so-and-so. And no one was responding. And we live in an honor dorm, which is considered like a cut above the general population unit. So in our honor dorm, there's a criteria. We have an operational procedure, and there's a lot of expectations that we program and behave better than others. And I was looking at this woman, seeing her sitting outside in the heat in her wheelchair, and I said out loud, you'd think that people in this unit would care, that someone would go over there and push her to chow, and we call ourselves an honor dorm unit. And I was being really sarcastical. And standing 6 feet away, I saw Angel pivot, step out of the line, and she started heading straight over to the lady. And in that moment, I realized, even as I am only grumbling about the situation, that Angel was in action. So I may have talked about it, but Angel was all about it. So to me, this is who Angel Marie Koziak was. And that was 1 month before she died. And to know that she was a person who wasn't thinking about, if I wait 2 more minutes, I'll be in the chow hall sitting down at the table eating my food. She saw a need and she stepped into it. And it was such a lesson to me, and made even more poignant by her loss 30 days later. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to honor her and honor who she was as a human being with you now and sharing these words. So thank you.
We mourn the loss of Orlando, Tim, and Angel. This next memorial for Vannie Sykes is read by her friend, Michelle.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Daniel Jones, and I will be reading 2 memorials today about the beloved Vannie Sykes. The first memorial is entitled To an Angel on Earth, and it's written by Miss Pittman. I'm going to make my words out as if I'm submitting this notation in the now and not the present. Thank you for an unselfish heart and warm spirit, Thank you for assisting others who cannot assist oneself with opportunities and choices that he or she didn't believe they could do. Thank you for being the person you are. Thank you isn't enough to say to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and rest in power, Vene. This next piece was submitted on behalf of Adamu Chan, a writer and filmmaker incarcerated on the West Coast. It's a collaboration between himself and Sarah Kim. They dedicate this piece to all those who have lost their lives during this pandemic. Sorry for the delay. When I say all those who've lost their lives, I mean all who have lost their lives, not only from coronavirus, but from the increase of violence and the decreased amount of already inadequate healthcare. Those who have not been able to see their families in months because of the halt in visitation. We do acknowledge that there has been many who have lost their lives by unknown causes or underreported COVID. Thank you again for your patience, and thank you so much for joining us for our virtual vigil. This is part of this week's Week of Mourning events organized by Mark by COVID. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm so glad you could be here.
To stand on its foamy. Somewhere there's an ocean that I desperately need to see. To stand on its foamy shores and contemplate the vastness of existence. To yell my name into the oblivion and feel the kiss of salty mist on my face. Somewhere beyond deserts of concrete and steel, out past morality and right and wrong, I see your footprints in the sand and anticipate our union.
rush quickly. You can't come with me. 'Cause I'm falling rush. 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 I'm falling rush.
Thank you to Adame for sharing this work. We want to share another memorial for Vinay that we skipped, another memorial read by Michelle Danielle Jones. Thank you again, Michelle. We're so happy to see you.
The second memorial is by Chastity Michael, and it's entitled Vinay's Colleague and Friend. Vinay was a once-in-a-lifetime type of person. She was the type of woman that you meet and your spirit automatically gravitates to. Pure-hearted and selfless. She's truly an angel on earth. The way Vinay and I met was like divine intervention, serendipitous, and we always talked about how the universe aligned things for our meeting. We connected on so many levels. As the child of an incarcerated parent, I understood the things her children experienced, and she understood things from the parent's perspective, bringing us closer together. I worked with Vinay as a program associate for Hope House NYC, which she co-founded, and poured her heart and soul into. She absolutely loved the women and wanted nothing but the best for them. Vinay was the true definition of a woman who stands for woman. Her unique set of experiences and skills led her on a path of service to formerly incarcerated women and their families. She would always say, if you help a woman in need, you are extending that help and love to her children. And she was very passionate about women and their children. Vinay and I also co-founded Lexi's Promise Together, named after her daughter Alexis Sykes, a prom initiative to create the perfect prom experience for the child of an incarcerated parent. This was inspired by her inability to help prepare and attend Alexis' 8th grade prom. She wanted to give children with an incarcerated parent the same help, resources, and opportunity Alexis had while she was away due to the help of her family and friends. Vinay's untimely death due to COVID-19 was truly devastating and heartbreaking. It seemed that she had so much left to do on this earth. But what I realized is that her legacy will always live on through all the lives she touched. It will also live on through the initiative of Dream Deferred Incorporated, Vinay's Dream House, a safe housing space for formerly incarcerated women and girls that will be located in Brooklyn, New York. Before Vinay's passing, we were working together to open a new trauma-informed safe housing space that is more focused on trauma and healing. This was truly Vinay's dream and vision. She wanted every woman to live out their dreams and write their own life stories. Healing was at the forefront of her goals when it came to the transformation and the rebuilding of formerly incarcerated women. With the support and guidance of Susan Burton and A New Way of Life, we will still be able to realize this dream for Vinay, and Dream House NYC will be open in November 2020 in Vinay's honor. It is our goal to keep Vinay's work alive and continue to spread the same love and passion she gave to so many. And I just would add briefly, I got a chance to work with her as well at Hope House. And such a beautiful person, a warm heart, and passionate about the work that she did. I will never forget her. A beautiful light is gone from this place. Thank you.
Thank you again, Michelle, for sharing those words. And again, rest in power, Vinay. May your memory be a revolution. Our last memorials come from Georgia and Illinois. These memorials come from two communities in mourning behind the walls. In their mourning, they are like communities all over the country during this pandemic, but those behind bars mourn in conditions of extreme
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I apologize for the technical difficulties. It looks like we may have lost Paige for a moment. So I will introduce this final set of memorials. Our last memorials come from Georgia and Illinois. They come from two communities in mourning behind the walls. In their mourning, they are like communities all over the country during this pandemic. But those behind bars mourn in conditions of extreme deprivation caused by the failure of political authorities to take decisive action. We deplore this failure, and we hope that those inside can continue to lean on each other, as these memorials show that they do. Thank you all again so much for being here. We'll now share these final memorials with you.
Miss Moselle Anderson was an amazing lady. I am so saddened by her loss.
I used to walk with her to the store and just talk with her up and down the walk. And we lived together in a dorm E2. And I would make her some snacks. Who would have known I would be an expert at taking prison food and making it amazing, and she loved it, and I would make it for her. I have a certain affinity for older people, and I'm just very sad that she lost her life to COVID. Miss Moselle, you are amazing, and you will be missed, and it was my pleasure to have known you.
Miss Moselle Anderson. Most people called her Miss Moselle, but to me, she was always Mosey. She survived by 2 sons and 1 daughter-in-law who she loved dearly. She was preceded in death by the love of her life, her husband, as well as her best friend, Miss Sharon Shields. Miss Moselle loved the Lord and read her Bible daily. Most people didn't realize she had a wonderful sense of humor and always had a story to tell. We lived together as roommates in the honor dorm at Pulaski. Miss Moselle was very talented. She could draw and write poetry. She also could knit and crochet. At Christmas time, she made many hats for the children who were involved with the Children's Center. Miss Moselle was very proud of her sons, one of who owned his own heating and air business. Her sons came often to visit, and she looked forward to their visits. Miss Moselle loved to eat and talk about cooking. Sweet wraps were her favorite thing. She was a blessing. A former roommate.
A tear streamed down by Demetrius Clay. These are the times that try men so. Thomas Paine must have foreshadowed COVID-19 when he wrote these words. My soul aches, but I do not display it publicly. Those I mourn would want me to put a brave face on. Trust me, I know. The agonizing losses I endure stain my pillows with salty tears. I feel moments of privacy in the quietude of late night, then I bawl. I've experienced death. Sometimes it has had a profound effect on me. I was unprepared for the flurry of furious blows that this pandemic, COVID-19, would bludgeon upon me. I'm old enough, strong enough, and mature enough to handle and accept death and loss. But it's the memories that seem to uninterruptedly tug at my heartstrings. This is the case with the loss of 3 warriors that I've had the honor to call friends. James Baldy Scott, Joseph Big Spank Wilson, and Gary G. Jones. Their memories have impacted and affected me deeply. When I was quarantined for the virus myself, I received the horrible news about Big Spank. The news hit me like a ton of bricks and made me take a pause to count my blessings. Spank, as he was called by many, was soft-spoken, but his words were loud with guidance. I met him at a reckless moment in my life. He showed me that despite my situation, I was not the chaotic nature of my actions. He put his arm around me, walked and talked, and reassured me that the mountain was not mine alone to climb. Tears streamed down my face, but I hear him say, it's going to be okay. Through him, I met James Baldy Scott. Baldy, now this old man was smooth as Tennessee whiskey, and his personality as warm as a glass of brandy, to quote Chris Staples. He seemed to always be unnerved by all the constant chaos around him. He was the epitome of unscathed, in my opinion. He shared the love of baseball, softball, and football. Most importantly, he had a way of calming me. I guess it was because he had traveled the same road I was headed down. I received the news of his demise from his cellmates. Ironically, I had made an inquiry about his well-being hours earlier. I was devastated to hear that day that the same man who had kicked cancer's ass had died. The tears streamed down, but I could hear his voice saying, keep playing the hand that you're dealt. Eventually, it will be the best hand at the table, an inside message we serve. Gary G. Jones, I met this fogey when I arrived back in Stateville in 2017. His ability to talk smack and tell it like it is drew me to him. walk to the healthcare unit from the cell house, I learned all the do's and don'ts and the ins and outs of Stateville. This all happened in a matter of 5 minutes. G. Jones was worn down and long in the tooth, but he had the resilience of a prize fighter and the mouth of a young Muhammad Ali. If you listen to him talk long enough, nothing and nobody could whip his ass. And if he thought you could be the one, he'd talk enough shit to sway your thoughts on winning. He loved life, lived life in the way he wanted, and changed lives, mine included. The tears stream down. I hear him saying, dry them tears up, I'm gonna be okay. In a place where you can seemingly grow numb to the pain life throws your way, I've learned to accept that. Some pain is for growth. Some people are placed in your life's path at the right time. Many of them you meet halfway, and then there are some who meet you where you are. These people leave the most lasting impression. Sadly, when they go on to sit and sup with the Creator, you realize that for that moment, they walk with you and even sometimes carried you on your journey. I do not cry for these men and mentors out of sadness or sorrow, but the tears are joyful. They are for the memories I am blessed to have, the brotherly love we shared, and the immense honor I had to call them friends. The tears stream down.
Joseph Wilson, or Big Spank, was a friend that lost 2 fights in one night. COVID-19 robbed him of the opportunities that he had been preparing himself to use under different circumstances. He received his GED months ago, which allowed him to be accepted into North Park's master's program. This was a personal goal, an investment into his growth. Life chooses to live its own way, and all we can do is try to find understanding in the scenes projected to us. This reasoning is something he promoted because it gave value to something so fleeting and was his way of staying connected to what meant the most to him, family and friends. Death stole all opportunities from him, ending the hurt and pain while delivering the smallest amount of relief. This relief just so happens to be freedom. No more confinement, no more restrictions, just freedom for a friend.
The last 3 memorials you heard were from Stateville, and we reach out our hearts, our thoughts, and all of our concern to Stateville right now because we hear reports from inside that are not good, as from many other places. We have one more memorial by a friend of Justin, who is known as Big Filla and Big Spank. Thank you so much for sharing this remembrance with us, Howard.
The big fella, one of my closest friends here in the institution. I've known him for many years, but for the last 10 years, we got real solid. He was a really good person. When you hear this guy laugh, you literally draw near. He's got the Santa Claus laugh. It was like, yo, what's so funny? He was the big dude that always smiled and was always laughing. He invited you to friendship without even asking. You talk to him today, you want to talk to him tomorrow. And the next thing you know, he's your homie. And that's how it was for me. I remember about 7 years ago when I started barber college, I was sharing with him how I was hoping to learn skills to provide for myself and my family when I'm out of prison. It was a really big deal, and he offered to come over to let me cut his hair. I was like, nah, man, I can't even really line my own beard and mustache. You know what I mean? That's why I shave it all off. You know what I mean? So I really don't know what I'm doing. And he was like, yo, you got to learn somehow, right? He was like that from what I know about Bob. He was like, from what he knew about Bob, was the most important thing is confidence. So don't worry about messing my hair up. You need to develop confidence and get good. So I'm looking at this dude thinking like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But so not only is he Santa Claus, but he's like the Buddha or Confucius or somebody, right? Dropping wise jewels on me, you know what I'm saying? So I took him up on his offer, and he came over, and I sat him in his chair, and we were kicking it, and I gave him a haircut. It wasn't a good haircut at all, you know what I mean? When we looked in the mirror, we both laughed. But he said he would come back the next week, and I'll try again. And he came to that barbershop every week for me to cut his hair for about 9 years. Excuse me, not 9 years, but for about a year, maybe like 9 months to a year. And he didn't get a good haircut at all. You know what I mean? And that was the kind of person he was. You know, that's the kind of friend he was. He sacrificed himself so I could become a better barber and develop the confidence that I needed for that trade. And that meant a lot to me. You know what I mean? So this was the kind of thing that Big Fella did often. He wanted to support you. He wanted to be a part of your success, not for selfish purposes. He was a selfless individual, and he was very creative. Listen to this. This is some real stuff right here, though, right? He actually taught dudes in prison how to make friendship bracelets, right? I'm talking about like with bright, cute colors like pink, yellow, pastel purples, all that, right? With little hearts on them. And so the thing is, right, that's not the type of thing that you expect to see guys in prison, right? Guys got tattoos on their face, they got shaved mohawks, and you know what I mean? Gang signs all in their head, everything, right? He got like 4 or 5 of them sitting around him on the yard with like really vibrant colors of string, weaving little bracelets. You know what I mean? But he was teaching them how to do that so they can have a way to connect with their family members. You know what I mean? Especially like a lot of us who had daughters, that was like a really big deal. It was a way for us to stay connected to our kids, right? And to develop that softer side that everybody say that we ought to have. You know what I mean? And so it was funny though, because after he got good at it, he'd just sit there, right? Because he's a big fella now, don't get me wrong. So he'd just be sitting on the edge of his bunk with his arms folded. And it'd be like 3 or 4 guys huddled over in front of his cell. You know what I mean? And he'd be sitting there saying, yeah, you got it. Yeah, like that. Yo, so fast. Yeah, but yeah, that was my dude, man. You know, that was what he did to help people connect, both inside and outside the prison. Outside the prison. I'm gonna miss him dearly, and I wish I could have told him I had a chance. I wish I had a chance to tell him that I love him and that I appreciated everything that he did. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like taboo for guys in prison to say, you know, I love you to one another, right? Or even to regard each other as a friend. But even though that's something that's understood, I wish that I had the courage, right, to kind of like buckle against that taboo and tell him that I actually loved him and appreciated all that he did. Because I wonder if how often has he ever heard that from his male friends, you know what I mean? So I owe a lot of my maturation to him. He showed me what a friend should be. He'll be greatly missed by me and other guys around him. I'm going to try my best to carry on his legacy. And I hope that his family can find some kind of comfort in my words. Rest in peace, big fella.
Our hearts are with the family and friends of Big Fella and G. Jones and James. That portrait that you saw of Big Fella was by Asha Edwards, and all of the other beautiful artwork that we have had donated from the Justice Arts Coalition, who works with incarcerated artists, connecting them with partners on the outside, and have been doing amazing workshops in and outside of prisons. We also want to share of Mama Moselle that didn't work earlier, but here it is. And thank you to Bree Simpson of Women on the Rise, an amazing grassroots organization here in Atlanta led by formerly incarcerated women of color, for sharing her words of her experience at Pulaski with Mama Moselle. And from Moselle's former roommate, her words read by another former roommate who called her Mosey. We'd like to thank all of our readers for sharing your stories of your loved ones. We mourn with you today. And to close this first part of the vigil, we'd like to play another poem by Rufus Rudolph. This piece is entitled, Certainly Others Violated Insurmountable Dreams, or COVID. I just want to take a moment to thank all of my Mourning Our Losses team members. I've been on the camera this whole time, but these other people that you see on the side really did the hard work to make this happen. And thank you to everyone who has contributed to all of these wonderful memorials. Before the next part of our vigil, which is our Say the Names part, which will unfortunately take quite a while, I want to read an email that we received from an inside correspondent. I just wanted to let you know I'm here if you need me, and I look forward to helping in any way that I can. I had COVID-19 in here, and it was not easy. The whole process is unbelievable in the prison system. I don't know how much information they actually give to the public besides the things they are doing politically correctly, which, as we know, is a far stretch for morally correct. I watched on CNN a few days ago as they scrolled all the names of the deaths resulting from COVID-19. The names that were not on that list were the prisoners that died while incarcerated of COVID-19. I cried silently in my dark, cold cell, alone, as once again I realized that from inside these walls, life or death don't count or matter. Not even in large-scale matters like this. So the efforts you have put forward to make a light to shine on those souls lost in this dark place without even a chance is a commendable deed. You should know that no matter what people may think about what you are doing out there, you are doing God's work, what God's word tells us to do, and remembering those in Hebrew. No one can take that from you. Thank you. We will now have a moment of silence for all the unnamed dead. Everyone who may appear or may not appear as a number on a dashboard somewhere. Their lives do matter, and we honor them. Thank you again for everyone who's joined us here today. We now invite you to participate in our Say Their Names segment of our vigil, and we invite you to say these names out loud with us.
Dave Thomas, Casadir Sarah Williams, Colony Nicole Wilson, Clarence Shepard, Robert Stewart, Alan Barton, Billy Joe Moore, William Herschel Moon, Daniel Everett, Henry Robinson, Raymond Earl Allen, Barry Stewart Foy, Lavaris Evans, Ricky Lynn Patterson, Robert Lopez, James Dunner, Wilson Roosevelt Connor, Sylvester Hartley, Jonathan Mallory, John Paul Desnoka, Christopher Knowles, James Pruitt Jr., Wanda Gay Dyson, William Edward King, Willie Bernard Collins. Derek Coley, Jim Wilson, Jimmy Frost, Larry Atkins, Morris Davis, Frederick Chance, Albert Johnson, Robert Todd Birmingham, Roy E. Davis, Jimmy White, Kenneth Olden, Daniel Wood, Mr. Dyer, John Young, Daniel West.
Joseph Acid, David Martinez, Kevin Fletcher, Larry Brown, Valentina Blackhorse, Robert Sitting Down Prohl, Alfonso Raymond Salazar, Capone, Jose Reynoso, George Hayes, William D. Beltran, Ernie Quintero, Kevin Azad. Salvador Garcia, Steve Garcia, Daryl A. Gout, Spanky Brown, Mario Garcia, Eduardo Robles Holguin, Alan Beisel, Norman Duncan, Michael Hampton, Ralph Ruiz, Severin Whitney, Troy Ashmus, Marcus Trevino, Corey Saunders, Thomas Grimes, Dwayne Michael Carey, Bradley James Ghilarducci, Jeffrey J. Hawkins, Manuel Machado Alvarez, Scott Erskine, Joe Banks, Gilbert Bobby Polenko, Michael McDonald, Daniel Lee Badnes, Daniel Ruiz, Leonard Auerbach, David John Reed, Carlos Ernesto Escobar Mejia, Michael Fleming, Rex Demone Begay Sr., Victor Cruz, Joseph C. Townsell, Eric William Warner, Madonna Watson, Richard Eugene Steitley, Edward Clark, DeVerney Ford, Gary Michael Mike Maddow, Jimmy Lee Houston, David Worksman, Carlos Oropeza Cañas, Danny Mendoza, James Lino, Steven Sino, Miguel Martinez, Joaquin Diaz, Orlando Jean Romero, Scott Douglas Cutting Sr., Jose Ortiz, Ephraim Stutson, Johnny Avila, Mel Henson, John Beams, Oliver M. Bowling, Joseph S. Cordova, Pedro Pete Arias, Francisco Ramirez, Gerald Edward Johnson, Oscar Rocha, Mohammed Yusuf, Terrell Young, Philip Rivers, Michael Marin, Erica Mikadu, Adrian Solarzano. Charlie Peterson, David Gross, Michael Nunez, William Pohl, Anthony David Gentile, Carlos De Leon, Richard Roth, Fred J. Clanton, John W. Rosiolo, Joseph Slider, Robert Francisco, Charles R.J. Patterson, Peter Schellinger, Joseph S. Russo, Jim Hunter Jr., James Waller.
Stephen Maxwell, Jose Mario Gallego Zapata, Jose Joseph Joe Foster, Angela Brown, Jesse Bannerman, Richard Rick Berry, Johnny Brown, Adea Del Carmen Laura Ramirez, Tyra Williams, Edward Hill, Charles Pugh, Laurie Rogers, Ivan Gonzalez Ramirez, Malcolm L. Scarborough, Wayne Rogers, Henry Camacho, Jairo Bravo, Martha Beatty, Pamela Ford, Safira Johnson, Angela Chavers, Maurice Ford, Alan Jerome Pollock, Lawrence Carter, William Wilson, Jeffrey Sand, Larry Lay, Severa Franklin, Jose Diaz Ayala, Dana Peterson, Jose Barragan, Joseph Adavia, Charles Dan Marique, Lynn Jones, Shannon Bennett, Nelson Martinez, Luis A. Velez, Onovo Perez Montufar, Rafael Rosario, and Charles Hobbs.
May they all rest in power. Anthony Cheek, Moselle Anderson, Mr. Philpott, Onochi Akidonwu, Joe Quick, Roger Hodge, Romy Rowland, Robin Grubbs, Santiago Batten Oxlog, Eugene Griffin, Juan Antonio Aparicio, Jose Gulen Vega, Mr. Moore, Cipriano Chavez Alvarez. Ray Van Lingen, Richard Peterson, Timothy Lewis McGee, Jr., Frank Dawson Conover, William Sobsick, David Tehran, Thomas McGee, Leonard Hollis, Robert Simpson, Earl James, John Doran, Leslie Peroni, Ronald Rusty Rice, Antoine Stewart, G. Jones, John Smith, Vincente Lopez, Nicholas Lee, Russell Settlemeyer, James Scott, Joseph Tremaine Big Fella Wilson, Juan Salgado Mendoza, Carl Batiste, Antoine Jones, Jeffrey Pendleton, Larry Bourbon, Renee Olivo Sangabriel, Sheila Rivera, William Holland, Larry Staples, Richard O'Brien, Taiwan Davis.
Linnell Cheney, Gary Meineke, Gregory Finton Glenn, Tim Hocutt, Brian Dale Bird, Charles Lawrence, Scotty Edwards, Francine Earls. Junior Lee Chrisman, Bella Adebiyi, George Bernie Robert, Richard Rose, Fidel Torres, Fidel Torres, Thomas Krebs, Daniel Morris, Richard Sattel, David Lee Taylor, Stephen Cook, Juan Mata, Carlos Calderon Mendoza, Lafayette Rodriguez Mitchell, Gerald Porter, Charles Woolsey, Leslie Bryan. George Escamilla, Michael Williams, Stanton Johnson, Dorothy Pierre, Lloyd Mayers, Rosa Thomas, George Jeffus, Michael Lilly, Sandy McCain, Carl Leonard, Casey McVie, James Wilson, Patrice Florent, John Cottrello, Wallace Holly Jr., Christian Freeman, Patrick Jones, Henry Turner, Nicholas Rodriguez, Timothy Gordon, David Townsend, Louis Dempsey, Romian Jolly.
Gregory Rector, Robert Herndon, Darrell Underhill, Anthony Blue, Donald Brown, Jason McIntyre, Andrew Twin Parker Bay. Ava Cooper, Felix Repilado Martinez, Kendrick Bernard Lee, Richard Miles, Andre Woods, Dino Whitley, Frank Colin, Jerome Golowczewicz, Mark Webster, Roland Weeks, William Lovett, Angelo Patsalis, Donna Faye Collins, John Thompson, Raymond Woodmansey, Willie Peterson, David Myers, Edward Kramer, Henry Smith, Lawrence Sparks, Ricky Brown, William Vogler, Anthony Wainwright, Donald Campbell, John Ing, Richard Palumbo, Alvin Roberts, David Haney, Eugene Shingle, James William McGuff, Marcus Washington, Robert Lane, William Drew, Daniel Kimbrough, Gregory Renardo Kelly, Leonard Du Bois Meminger, Ursula Hurd, Vaughn Rogers,
Chester Kelly, Don Haston, Gerald Akins, Jimmy Price, John McMillan, Michael Drelick, Stephen Samuelson, Willie Jeffries, Dave Harris, Jack Ronald Earl, Michael Mashinsky, Warren Lee Wright, Daniel Sanders, Donald Gregory, Gordon Hovard, John MacArthur, Myron Taylor, Bernard Washington, Willie Slaughter, Damon Burton, Gail Wilson, Larry Boise, Susan Farrell, Bobby Haggett, Dennis Jacobs, George Dombrosis, Jerry Anderson, Michael Weaver, Severin Walthall, William Turner, Don York, Joe Kearney, Nick Patsalis, William Garrison, Dave Harris, Earl King, Gregory Heisler, Joshua Carzales, Richard Owens, and Walter Jones. Adrian Raymar Keys, Leroy Wallace Bergstrom, Emmanuel Brewster Jr., Randy Bisset, Carl Shane Cox, Dwayne Antonio Mitchell, Earl Lee Dykes,
Bernardo Luis Olarta Loaiza, Eric Spiewak, Joe Tapia III, Ricky Lynn Miller, Barbara Ann Stewart, David Grant, Jack Edward Toledo, Mark E. Hebert, Barry Johnson, Dongfan Greg Chung, Jerry Lynn Dempsey, Norman F. Grimm Jr., Alexander Petaway Jr., Charles Richard Roots, Faye Brown, John Daly, John Doe, Wayne Delvin Littlecrow, Andre Williams, Charlene Phillips, Gary Edward Nixon, John A. Bruce, William E. Miller, Alan Hurwitz, Bobby Lee Medford, Fabian Tinsley, John Marone, Steve Arthur Robinette, Andrew Charles Markovchi, Coretta Jean Downing, Isaac Lamar Byers, Juan Ledoux Moreno, William Walker Minto. Carmelo Herrera, Louis Giambi, Robert Brown, Abdul Aziz Farrakhan, Calvert Buchanan, George Marks, LaPatrick Turner, Kadama Hamilton, Tony Koch, Elias Chalet, Ricardo Williamson.
Tiffany Mofield, Benny Devone, Damian Jasper, Joseph Morrison, Peter Simonovich, Thomas Clements, William Prell, Bernard Waddell Sr., Frank Silvera, Ricky James, Zeb Craig, Bienvenido Casilla, George Wilberg, Kevin Ellington, Kahir Saber, Timothy Mormon, William Conway, Daryl Billy Parks, Nanamdi Azikiwe, Rory S. Price, Sergio Rossini, Andrew Vida, Candido Casares, James Trotman, Michael Wilson, Michael Bright, Richard DeBow, Vincent Brandon, David Thomas Brown Sledge, Nelson Perdomo, Sheldon Kyle, Anthony Brown, Chart Chavalaporn, Jay Goldberg, Miguel Hernandez, Roberto Rivera, Vito Nagro, Charles Ullery, Maria Gibbs, Robert Big Bob Livingston, Andrew Dixon, Calvert McKenzie, Hugo Sandoval, Laura Yelek, Ricardo Williamson, Vincent Krzyzewski, Denise Nagrodsky, Peter Shanley, Susan Sakala, Artis Cato,
Corey Mitchell, Jose Roman, Morgan Youngblood, Thomas DeGroat, Wayne Davis. Connie Jones Hawkins, Joel Howard, Quincy Simpson, Charles Harris, Hector Rodriguez, Michelle Sumter, Walter Ants, Chitwa Tse, Hunter O'Kelly Rodriguez, Miguel Gomez, David Perez, Elvester McCoy, Leonard Carter, Raymond Rivera, Benjamin Smalls, Eli Galan, Maurice Lacey, Richard Kloss, Darlene Lulu Benson CA, Juan Mosquero, Ramon Escobar, Calvin Grohoski, Franklin Rolando, Michael Tyson, Vannie Sykes. Ahmad Ricky Taylor, Dwayne Pete Gannon, Johnny Thompson, Oscar Lopez Acosta, Tina Reeves, Christopher Malone, Jesus Silva, Mr. Roberts, Roosevelt Henderson, David Ale, John Dawson, Omer Williams, Terry Loomis, Bernard Atta, Gregory Clark Jr., James Drugan, Margarito Garcia Fragoso, Richard Nesby, William Hutzel, Carlos Ridley, James Woodward, Michael Brookwalter, Richard Berger, Woodrow Taylor, Alvin Turner, Frank McCoy, Kenneth Roth, Richard Amos, William Stanchek, Charles Viney Jr., Jesse Ziegler, Mr. Jackson, Richard Bobcat Goldthwait. Roosevelt Larry Knox, Clarence Stephen Morrell, Douglas Allen Reed, William Dean Brame, Vernita Watts. Rudolph Sutton, James Bumpy Bennett, Jerome Beverly Tucker, Yvonne Harris. Brian Furman, Elson McCaney Jr., Jerry Lee Henderson, Robert Lee Ficklin, Alton Leon Williamson, Darrell N. Mitchell, James Slater, Paul Earl Jeter, Walter Jackson, Anthony Lewis Clark, David Hightower, James Robert Byrd, Randolph Roy Diggs, Wayne Curtis Fricks.
Danny G. Carmile, Ernesto Alonso, Larry Noel Eaton, Mark Lee Trammell, Samuel Wilson Jr., Danny Lee Jenkins, Gary Clifton Hamilton, Martin William Duncan, Stanley Smith, Carl Fraser Good, Ernie Strong Sr., Larry Lee Lewis, Sam Harold Smith, Dante Reeves Bay, George William Hughes, Marvin Meek, Terry Lee Allewine, Ronnie Johnson, Dadra Denise Porter. Albino Rodriguez Martinez, Angel Rene Mendez, Benny Skinner, Chanel Lee Greer, Charles Ray Martin, Daniel Thompson, David Martinez, Dennis Lynn Lowry, Eleazar Avila Guerrero, Fernando Pena, Jean Allen Brown, Gloria Prue, Herbert Garcia, Jackie Pace, James Johnson, Jerome Nabua, Joe Ling, Jose Martinez, Jose Victor Bonilla, Kevin Ivey, Luther Charles Flowers, Matthew Clayton Pouncey, Miguel Arciba, Paul Brown, Ramon Castillo, Ricardo Maldonado, Robert Booker, Russell Hill, Stephen Lewis Smith, Thomas Ogungbire, Valentin Lopez Gonzalez, Vidal Zaragoza.
Willie Eanes, Adrian Duncan, Ambrosio Salinas, Baldemar de Leon Jr., Carl Malone, Charles E. Holt, Crescenciano Oliva, David Randall, David Rene Martinez, Edward Chandler Hughes Jr., Eric Johnson, Frederick Ebenal, Gilbert Brasino, Harvey Lee Went, Jacinto Salins Cortez, James Gibson, James Robert Sampley, Jimmy Ray Malone, Johnny Mack White, Jose Garcia Brasino, Kelvin Wiltshire, Louis Anderson, Marion Sales, Michael Wesley Searcy, Osa Aloha Naiki, Ralph Neely, Reynaldo Perez, Robert Armstrong, Roy Lee Bozier, Stephen Allen Fox, Thomas Rogers, Tommy Lee Freeman, Vicente Rodriguez, Willie Charles Price, Akbar Shabazz, Andrea Highbear, Bartolo Infante, Cedric Dwayne Lacey, Charles Edward Burke, Daniel Campos, David Quintero, Deborah Lynn Peringer, Edward Lemoyne King, Fernando Garcia, Gary Hampton, Gilbert Gonzalez, Henry Daniel Farr, Jackson Ponge, James Janetta, Jeffrey Davis, Joe Chanel, Jonathan Keith Goodman, Jose Manuel Rivera, Kenneth Harbin, Luis Garza, Mark Stamps, Miguel Angel Duarte, Oscar Ortiz, Rachmand Jagaru, Reginald Dwayne Jones, Robert Hone, Ruben Martinez, Stephen Benford McRae, Thomas DeVenti, Tommy Russ Schofstall, Victor Cantu,
Willie Kohler, Alonso Garza Salazar, Anthony Edwards, Antonio Fernandez Ayala, Bai Tron, Charles Chacon, Clifford Lee Lewis, Daniela Garza, Danielle Roshan Sims, David Brooks, Ernest Jones Jr., Elijah Neighbors, Florencio Zarate Salas, Floyd Thomas Scott, Gerald Barragan, Guadalupe Lupe Mesa Jr., Hugo Martinez, James Power, James Brewer, James Lorque, Jesse Bolton, Joe Rodriguez Coronado, Jose Guzman, Charles Hart.
Jose Perez, Juan Torres, Labroth Boa, Mary Neba, Michael Milligan, Michael Mickey Stevens, Nicholas Paredes, Philip Daniel Tompkins, Ray Caballero Tapia, Richard Calvin Gibson, Richard Varapina, Rolston Lockett, Sandra Rivera, Teresa Ellie, Thomas Weber, Timothy De La Fuente, Vernell Smith, Wendell Eves, Alvin Murray, Arnold Cordes Hall, Bobby Neal Anderson, Charles Hart, Clifford Danny Wright, Darren Houston, David Hernandez, Edward Cantu, Elizabeth Jones, Francis Devassi Puther, Gerald Earl Gilbert, Gustavo Coronado, Ignacia Saucedo Garcia, James Coleman, James Allen Smith, Jesus Rodriguez, John Preston Creech, Jose Fede Morenas, Justin McKinley, Lee Rue Culp Jr., Mario Alvera Vasquez, Michael Lynn Sprague, Nicholas Andres Sanchez, Preston Cheney, Ray Charles Walker.
Robert Hoffman, Ronald Schultz, Sherman Albert Davis, Terry Jackson, Timothy Bazraux, Vernon Adderley, Wendy Campbell, Alfredo de la Vega, Annie Mae Smith, Bernard Ferguson, Charles Hanbury, Clifford Childs, Danielle Perez Martinez, David Urick, Donnie Graviner, Elias Villanueva Jr., Fernando Sabonje Garcia, George Bond, Guadalupe Ramos, Herman Martinez, James Matthews, James Neely, Jerry Esparza, Joe Earl Thomas, Jose Garza, Joseph Young, Larry Larnell Gray, Maria Mendez, Michael McClarty, Nathaniel Morgan, Paul Alexander Casiano, Raul Rodriguez, Richard Hawley, Roger Rust, Sandra Kincaid, Susan Ann Roberts, Thomas Rodriguez, Vaughn Harvey, Walterio Rodriguez, Abraham Vega, Alvin Ray Spencer, Arnoldo Almeida, Bryant Adele Davis, Charles Ray Mason, Coy D. Kaufman Jr.,
David Turner, David Erasmo Garcia, Edward Hawkins Jr., Eric McQuiston, Frankie Randall, Gilbert Gomez, Harold Dean Wilson, Isidro Hernandez, James Weston Jr., James Lee Price, Jimmy Ray Price, Johnny Davis, Jose Franco Vargas, Carl Patrick Huldich, Leonard Clerkley, Mario Limon Saucedo, Michael Shane Brown, Nicole Perez, Rafael Cruz, Raymond Lonzo Kirby, Robert Haig Rogers, Ronnie James Sparks, Stanley Leon Blackwell, Terry Lee Walls, Tommy Rodriguez, Veronica Martinez Carrera Perez, William Callahan, Donald Parker. Melissa Ann Horn, James Thomas Hill, Askia Asmar. Derby Martinez. William Bryant, Dan Oakes, Beresford Anthony Morse. Dion Crowell. Richard Rick Treadwell. Carl Patrick Huldich. Dana December Smith, Victor Bueno.
Thank you to everyone who stuck with us and said their names. And we have a song to close. We'll take this last moment of silence for all the untold, unnamed.